Greetings, brothers and sisters. Today is Sunday, the 23rd of August. This video will be going up on Monday night. This is my third attempt to do this initial greeting. The first time I forgot to turn on the microphone. The second time I kind of had to clear my throat and lost my train of thought. And I forgot to say greetings because I had already said it with my microphone off. But anyways, I usually have an idea of like where I'm going to go with my next video after I complete the last one, because stuff's already coming in. People sending me links, things I see on Twitter and YouTube or whatever it is. So I had some things I was going to say today, and I don't remember what I was going to start with. I had a bunch of leftover things I couldn't get to because my last video, so much of it ended up being about TPUSK. And what I've noticed is, it's like they say the mail never stops. That's why people were going into, would go postal. Like people who work at the post office would go nuts and start, shooting people and whatever it was. Because there's never any sense of completion, right? Like there's never any well, this is it. And these stories never resolve themselves. There's usually no resolution to these stories. People move on even before there could be resolution. Like there's the initial, let's find out about it. Everyone forms their opinion about things and their beliefs, but they don't, there's no other thing about it, right? You know what I mean? So, but anyways, this thing popped up. So let's start here. Then I'll go through the other stuff I had, and then I'll start working on this. Again, there shouldn't be this much news on Sunday. There shouldn't be so many things, but there always are. So apparently Trump said this here.
Between the U.S. and Canada collapsing overnight. A 50% tariff on $20 billion worth of Canadian goods taking effect at midnight. The Trump administration says Canada walked away from a deal that would have cut tariffs on steel, aluminum, autos, and lumber. Now, Canada is promising to hit back dollar for dollar, raising the stakes in a major fight with one of America's closest trading partners. Here to tell us more is U.S. Trade Representative Ambassador Jamieson Greer. Ambassador, thanks for joining us. This is kind of big news. So what do you expect to happen from here? Do you think trade talks will get back on track, or will there be a pause here for a while?
It's hard to say. We don't have new talks planned with the Canadians. We're moving forward with measures that respond to Canadian retaliation.
Trade talk. Okay,
so let me go check to see if this is the person posted saying that this was happening just, this weekend or whatever. Let's check that out. So, Trump is either just out of his fucking mind, or he wants to create, some kind of financial collapse of America, like he's been told to do this. Maybe both are true. At least one of them is true. I think he's definitely out of his mind. Like you can tell, he's deteriorating. But, the United States is already suffering prices, goods, and services. We get so much from Canada. Things that are necessary. Of course, like they mentioned some of them, lumber. And he's going to tariff them, so that means he's going to drive those prices up, adding more stress to an already, collapsing American economy. He hasn't unfucked his mess in Iran yet. And now he's going to fuck around with Canada, right? You're in a vulnerable position. You have the midterms coming up, and, you have every reason to create stability. The problem with Trump is, he's a chaos agent. He's very arbitrary, very impulsive. He's not knowledgeable, and he doesn't ever take responsibility for his mistakes. And so, in life and, in any of these things, he doesn't even acknowledge mistakes mentally. And, he's now in this kind of divine, divinity complex where he thinks everything he's doing is somehow divinely orchestrated, when it's clearly, the opposite. It's a demonically orchestrated. And so, the only thing that can come out of this is bad things. Whatever deal he gets with Canada, that for whatever reason, the stock market's gone up. Bitcoin had another pump and dump surge or whatever, which seems like, why would that be happening? Like, what do they know that other people don't know? Another way to, I mean, it must be like one last gasp to try to, squeeze out some more pump and dump wealth while everything goes to shit. Like, I don't know. I can't explain it. I have no idea about how any of those things work. But they shouldn't, there shouldn't be a surge in the stock market. But the one thing the stock market loves is Republicans who come in and deregulate. They get rid of all regulations. Of course, those regulations lead to the 2008 economic collapse and so forth, things like that. And so that's where we are right now, where you have a president who is completely unstable. And he isn't being handled like Reagan and Biden were. When they started to go full dementia, they were handled. And so there was some stability there. This is no rhyme or reason. And Trump's all over the place, right? He's got all these fucking, he's got this weird relationship with this woman, whatever the fuck her name is, what I'm talking about. We'll get to her, but there's more about her coming out every day. So, all right, let's move on to the next thing here. So there's a MAGA rally in South Carolina, and Trump was trying to salvage his candidates thing. We'll cover that later. I had a video. I have to find that. But here, this guy gets...
Why? Well, I don't know. I don't know.
So he has a kill your local pedophile shirt. He starts yelling. Right, and this guy's giving him the finger. Look. This guy gives him the finger. This woman starts pointing at him. Look at these dumb motherfuckers here. Now, I don't know. I mean, it's hard for me to explain this away. Like, these people must watch just Fox News and then right-wing dumb fuck, media. I mean, I don't even know if they get their information. Like, they almost have to be finding every possible way not to get information that could tell them Trump's a piece of shit. Like, I mean, the implosion of the MAGA movement with Marjorie Taylor Greene and Tucker Carlson, the people around Trump, why do they always fucking turn on him? Is it because he's such a divine, great, fucking amazing person? They know he's not Christian. Like, many of the Christian leadership know he's not Christian. Like, what would make them fucking ignore all the evidence that Trump is overwhelmingly self-centered? I mean, the Epstein debacle, and then losing all those people, the division now within the Republican Party. Like, he's divisive, and he's always shitting on the people who are most loyal to him. He turns on everybody. Like, they turn on, there's always he has bad breakups because he's totally selfish, right? And he hasn't done anything that he promised. I mean, other than, wreck the fucking country. And these dumb fucks, look at them all. This guy giving him a finger. This one's like, sit down. And you know what? Where's all the young people? Like, all these people are 50 and older. And most of them in their 60s and some of the 70s. These are old fucking people. Like, there's, this is in South Carolina where there's... This guy's giving him a double finger.
That's all right. That person's going home to mom, going to get scolded because mom is voting for us.
Yeah, but not your kids. His kids are going to pat him on the back, bro. Like, you want the youth. They don't have any youth. Where's all the young people here? Right? Where's all the fucking people who are... this is the Charlie Kirk people, the young Republican people. Where are they? I mean, these are all fucking old-ass people. These are all, Fox News watching fucking Make America Great Again, freaking dumb fucks.
Mom is voting.
This woman in a red, white, blue shirt just waving him out. Watch him wave him out here. She's going to wave this guy out. Get out of here. Get out of here. So South Carolina is a very conservative state that, like Joe Biden, where you save Joe Biden's candidacy and the old people, right? The old, whatever's going on here. But Trump has to go there.
You're looking at live pictures out of South Carolina where the president is scrambling to save his hand-picked replacement for Senator Lindsey Graham. Now, this is all ahead of next week's runoff. Trump's choice is Graham's sister, Darlene. Now, she was backed by Trump to run for her late brother's seat, despite having never run for office or held any kind of elected office, a decision that sparked outrage from some Republicans, including a lot of senior ones in South Carolina who are backing her primary opponent, longtime South Carolina Republican Ralph Norman. And tonight, Trump is trying to help Darlene Graham clean up this gaffe.
Are Taiwan and the South China
We saw this already, but let's watch it again here.
see national security issues for the United States, and if so,
Who is this, Colonel Sanders here? What the fuck?
why or how?
I'm just going to be honest here. I'm not on national security. I'm not that informed on national security, so
It's not her answer here. It makes total sense that somebody who didn't ever do politics is all of a sudden a senator because her brother died. Her brother is a famous politician. And Trump says, all right, you inherit the fucking position of senator. Which, again, this is voted on by the states. It has nothing to do with the president. I don't even know how the president fucking does this. I'm not sure what the rules were that allowed Trump to say, oh, can his sister do it, right? Like, there's a good joke from the comedian Chris Porter, one of the better comedy specials out there. It's from about 4 or 5 years ago. And he says, he's talking about how these kids get lost in Iran. They wander, they're hiking somewhere, and they ended up in the mountains of Iran and getting captured by the Iranians. And he's talking about fucktards. And he said, there's a fucktard in every family. And if you don't know who it is, it's you, right? And, you had, remember, Clinton had his brother, whatever the fuck his name was a screw up. Of course, George W. Bush was a screw up in their family, but somehow he got elected. But you have the people who are, and I don't think she's necessarily a screw up. She's dead inside, right? Like she's not, she has no life vitality. She has no, she's just she's got no pulse. She's got no vibrance, right? Like, is she beaten down? Is she just mentally slow? And I'm not talking about the accent, right? Like, there's no, vigor. And there's no, vitality. Like, there's no energy. This is like what he would call Sleepy Joe. Or, or low energy Jeb. And, you have to have some kind of enthusiasm. Like, you just can't be Lindsey Graham's sister. And the problem for her and Trump is that she doesn't inherit his seniority. She can't be on all the committees that he was on. She's not going to have the same power. And so the South Carolinians, who may or may not like Lindsey Graham, realize that the guy can get things for their state, right? This is why the guy in Kentucky, these long-term senators, whatever that guy's name, Turtle, or anybody like Dianne Feinstein and these other people like that, Nancy Pelosi and all the rest of them. They stick around because the longer you stay there, you become almost like presidential in your power. You get on all these committees and you can improve things for your state, and you become famous nationally, being from a state that isn't as populated or well known or whatever. And so she doesn't have any of that. Like, she's not really a trained politician. It's her low energy though that makes her like, why would anybody vote for her? Like, she can't win this on her own. You can't. It's like the TPUS gay guys, right? Whatever Lindsey Graham had or didn't have is, closeted gay Republican dude. Clearly gay, right? Like, some of these people are just, they act effeminate. They're just not, low testosterone or whatever. But he's, and you don't have to be that. There's gay guys who are, football players and like in the military, and they're tough guys. Like, there's, but But in terms of what people think about gay, when they use the word gay, and there's guys who appear that way, but they're just kind of a little bit effeminate. They don't have whatever. They have whatever it is. But like Lindsey Graham was like real, like he was homosexual. He was gay. Never married. This is clearly that guy. And they probably had lots on him. Epstein like shit, and so Israel, because he was the way he felt about Israel. But Trump handpicked him because he had votes coming up, and he couldn't afford to lose those votes. And he handpicked her. I'm sorry, and now he's screwed because she just doesn't have it. I mean, look at her, like she's just, I have somebody who's got like, are you alive? Are you a walking corpse? Like you'd be talking to this person, and go, when did you die? Like how long ago did you die?
But I do support the military. My brother was in the Air Force for 33 years, so I will do everything I can to support the military.
But if he hadn't been, fuck those guys, right? Like.
Okay, well, the headlines were fast and furious after that response. Senator Darlene Graham implodes. I'm not that informed. National security is not my thing. National security trips up Senator Darlene Graham. So Graham was aware she had some cleanup to do. So the next day, she goes on Fox News' Sean Hannity.
So this issue of Taiwan came up last night, and I know people have made a big deal about it. And I'm like, I wonder how many people around the country, if I gave them a map, could pick out Taiwan. I don't think many, and not just the whole country. Never mind South Carolina.
Again, this is for stupid people. I mean, the news is for stupid people. It's for people who are maybe a little bit less stupid, because the people who can't. I was talking about this in my last video when 21% or 22% of Americans read below at or below third grade reading level, and 54% really read at sixth and below reading level. Well, that's fucked, right? Like that's half the country that's functionally illiterate, right, or close to it. I mean, barely, and in a country that's had public education forever, right? Like, how does that even happen? And you can see it in the people. Like, you can see it all around. You can see the degradation. And even if people have the ability to read, most of them they have no ability to think. Don't have the ability for complex, thinking skills and, critical thinking skills. And so, all of those things. But it doesn't matter if they can't identify Taiwan on a map. I mean, I know it's an island off of, there's a couple of islands off of China's coast. But, I mean, it doesn't matter if any of us can do that. She is fuck sure. She wasn't about identifying Taiwan on a map. Like, China's America's biggest enemy right now. I mean, many people would say it's Israel, but, in terms of the official story. And, they have this situation there in Taiwan, which is always an issue, right? And they have, a couple is like Hong Kong over there, that stuff. And she should know about that. But of course, she doesn't know about that because she's not bright. She doesn't have a good retention ability. You can say she's not smart. She's not sharp. And so they probably threw a lot of shit at her. And they figured she knew shit like this. And like it was a very simple question. And it shows that she's not qualified. It wasn't as bad as Fetterman, but it shows you I mean, she's just the sister of a guy who kind of sucked himself. It was horrible. Lindsey Graham was horrible, right? He's a sellout piece of shit shill, who was more concerned about Israel than he was about America.
Right. I think you're 100% right, Sean.
So there is someone, of course, who knows where Taiwan is. That was Darlene Graham's brother, the late Senator Lindsey Graham, right? Foreign policy was the center of his entire career. And here's the thing, when, you heard that back and forth, most people can't find Taiwan. Okay, it was not that long ago that some of the very same people backing Darlene Graham now had a real...
So she must have plastic surgery because, it's like, what the fuck, right?
A problem with Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's answer to a question about Taiwan. This was just back in February.
Would and should the U.S. actually commit U.S. troops to defend Taiwan if China were to move?
You know, I think that this is such a, you know, I think that this is this is, of course, a very long-standing policy of the United States.
Obviously, a lot of hesitation there, and, well, it was seized upon by some, including Trump and Vance, who had a lot to say about her answer.
Well, her performance was horrible. I was surprised, actually. I didn't know she was stupid. She had no idea. I don't think she knew what Taiwan was. That was not a good answer. Could be death-defying.
You know, this is the thing about all this stuff. You know, CNN didn't cover that. I mean, I knew this thing came up with her. But like, it's just all bullshit, right? Like this is, an indication. You know, I said this earlier. I used to say this all the time. You know, I used to mock Britney Spears, and her dancing videos and her bullshit stuff. And I had all these people who would, oh my God, you're so mean, and whatever. And I used to say, you didn't have any problem when I mocked Lady Gaga or when I mocked Cardi B, which I did quite often, because they said Britney Spears was sexually abused, but so was Cardi B, and so was Lady Gaga, according to all their stories. So you're not mad about the mocking. You just don't like it when I do it to somebody you identify with, right? And so, you're a hypocritical piece of shit. So go fuck yourself, right? It's, if you have a problem with the behavior, which you can totally say mocking is a mean behavior and I shouldn't do it. You can say that. Like, that's not that I want to hear that or listen to it because, I've already explained it. But that's a legitimate position. And that it is like, it's like hypocritical for me to do it and also talk about God and spirituality, which it is, because mocking isn't a spiritual behavior. There's no love in it. There's no whatever, in terms of brotherly and sisterly love and, divine love, these things. And so, and I've explained, this is a shit show and, this is a frickin', I mean, this is a barroom brawl on in terms of verbal, attacks and shit that you have to deal with when you're out in public on the internet and these things. And so, and just all the negativity you have to deal with. But you could say that. You could say the mocking bothers you. But it means when I do it all together. Or anybody. Like, anybody does it. But if you don't like it only when it's people that you identify with, then you're a piece of shit. Like, you're a hypocritical piece of shit. Don't complain about the mocking. Complain about the fact that you think Britney Spears is, somebody who's, should get special treatment. And that's what this is all about, special treatment. Special treatment for the people like me, right? Special treatment for myself. And then the people that I think about like are kind of, similar to me. That's what this is all about, like all this stuff. AOC, when she does it, she's a piece of shit. When Darlene Graham does it, she's fine. Like this is, and the left does the same thing. And this is, this subjectivity. Like when you start get more and more subjective and you warp reality to fit your worldview and your beliefs, then this is what happens, across the board, right? And Trump is, of course, one of the worst at it because he's all about Trump. Like all the people who are, all you have to do is be a Trump person or somebody Trump needs, but Trump's going to shit on Darlene Graham when she loses. Like if she loses this runoff election, again, didn't look like she had a lot of youthful support there. And she certainly isn't going to last. She's a one-termer. I mean, this is bad for her. But it's, she should lose. Like, she should not win. But she possibly could. But if, Trump has more sway in South Carolina where there's lots of, Trump dumb fucks. But, if she loses, then Trump's going to shit on her and say, it's not because like I did all I could with my, the love that the people have, South Carolina have for me. She just was a flawed candidate. The loss is her fault. But he should have never picked her. Like, like this is not good leadership. Like this was his only option. to get somebody that was a Trumper. Like he could have got a non-MAGA person. Now when people are starting to turn on Israel, these other things. So this is, there would have been a Republican runoff, and the chances of getting a MAGA person were pretty good because they're still pretty MAGA in there. But maybe not. Like maybe, he won't get another Lindsey Graham that was a complete taint licker. These people have, concern about their political future and the fallout for being a Trumper.
Because I suspect that'll be used in every campaign for the next 30 years against her. That was not a good one, Peter. What do you think?
That was embarrassing. If I had given that answer, I would say, you know what? Maybe I ought to go read a book about China and Taiwan before I go out on the world stage again.
Maybe you stop wearing eyeliner, you fuck.
And the very same Sean Hannity, who gave Darlene Graham cover this week, saying, well, people don't know where Taiwan is and all that, said this back in February after AOC's comment.
Prodigal Squad leader, AOC, simply could not answer basic questions about global affairs.
Well, Sean Hannity, of course, was right at the time. It is important to be able to answer questions about global affairs if you want to be in Congress or you want to be in the Senate. It's just a gating factor. Just have to be able to do it. But I guess the standards have changed. And now, just before leaving for South Carolina, President Trump previewed his defense tonight of Graham.
All she was is being honest. She's very smart, and she was being honest.
Okay, so there's you can't call her smart. You could say she's a good person. Like she's a good Christian woman. Like, whatever. Like she, maybe she doesn't have any scandals or closet because, she's not alive, right? She's a corpse. So she probably, unless she has a gambling problem, something, I don't know. Like she, unless she maybe slot machines if she can get enough energy to pull the lever or push the button.
I mean, she's into the price of groceries, the price of food, the price of beef. And it hasn't been her thing, but she's surrounded by very good people. And she said that she's totally for the military.
All right. So, Trump's desperately trying to save this fucking debacle. Another one of his messes that he created. And who the fuck knows how Lindsay actually died? I mean, the whole thing. Like, that's the kind of shit we live with now, right? Like, there's a complete instability. It's a chaotic time, right? Like, it's just like, and I had this when I was the end, my marriage, my first marriage. There was such crisis. My ex was such a, fucked up person and created, whatever her, someone who was, according to her story, sexually abused and physically abused by her dad, who was a CEO, like was a successful businessman, but also a fucked up person. And then her mom was even more psychotic and worse. And she, had, been institutionalized. My ex tried to commit suicide and, in her youth and just was, a mess. And, when you have that kind of situation where people are just, their internal world's in chaos and they themselves are unstable. Multiple personalities or something or whatever, just, fucked up personality disorders, these things. If you deal with people like that and you're around them and they're in your orbit, they create this kind of instability. And eventually, you have the healthy people in your family or whoever it is propping it up, doing damage control, but they begin to get drained. Like I was completely drained. And you're trying to hold it together and create stability. And you have your own bullshit, your own issues too. Like that's, people are flawed. And it just wears down, and you're just waiting for the straw that breaks the camel's back. And that's where we are as a country. Like, we're just waiting for that one thing where there's just, gas prices go up to $10 and don't come down. And nobody can afford shit, and all of a sudden people are starving. Like there's just, and we're close to that now. Like, people are like, using up their savings and their resources to deal with the higher prices, and then all of a sudden, there's this, it just pushes everyone over the edge. And then, this, like, whatever else happens, right? Like, there'll be a natural disaster or nuclear war, these big events. And it's just one thing too many. It could even be a small event. And it just pushes everything over the cliff. And that's where we are with Trump right now, like, just waiting for the for the fucking other shoe to drop. So I want to show you how fake and staged this whole thing is. We're going to get to Candace Owens and Terrell Farnsworth, where, you know, you can see that it's just all just fake and bullshit, right?
Evil eats itself. It just does. You just have to wait it out. And that's why if you just wait on the Lord, he will confuse, and he'll just, they'll just eat themselves. It's like, it's a thing. You can watch it, you can watch it in real time.
Okay. So, you know, the thing about all these types of people is how much of this is an act, how much do they buy into their role, how much are they aware, how much aren't they, right? But what she said is that evil eats itself, right? Let me switch over to voiceover here. So first of all, Erika Kirk said a bunch of things there that were, you know, she says it with confidence like it's a sure thing. She knows it. Like, evil eats itself. You just wait on the Lord for evil to eat itself, which it doesn't make any sense at all. You know, the Lord's going to make evil eat itself, right? And that, you know, you just see all these people and they'll eat themselves, like, you know, which is a silly way to think about things. So the real part of this would be this. People who are doing evil are going away from their soul's path. You know, you won't get this in Christianity because Christianity is for dumb fucks, right? You know, they've taken all the good teachings from Jesus and either changed them or erased them or minimized them and then put out things that they've created so that they can control you. And it's for, you know, it's not for, there's people who can do spirituality. There's people who can find divinity within themselves and they seek God. There's, you know, so you get to a point where you got to make a choice point to whether you are just going to come down and do the same old bullshit, life in and life out. And, you know, I mean, reincarnation's a real thing and all that stuff, but you're going to, you know, do the same thing, life in and life out. You know, you have these aha moments and you realize that, you know, you're not here for ego fulfillment or whatever it is. And you start developing spiritual tendencies, maybe just a little at first. And, you know, if over lifetimes it gets cultivated. And when you die, there's some processing that goes on in the, you know, the etheric worlds. And those things that you know, those little steps you made spiritually will be supported. And the other bullshit will be negated to whatever extent. And you come back down with more, you know, your soul is more, you know, there's more of a trajectory for spirituality. And some people just try it for a little bit and then they go back and they want to be put back in the matrix and they just, you know, and then they go in from life to life just stuck without, you know, any way of getting back on track, right? And so when that happens, you are constantly living under a situation where you know you're fucked, right? You're fucked because you're going against your soul's path. You're going against God's will. You're swimming upstream, and it's just a matter of time before that catches up to you. And so there's truth in that idea that evil eats itself in that sense. But, of course, she doesn't understand that, or I don't know if she's sincere or not. But the Lord has nothing to do with it, right? God has nothing to do with it because, you know, you're self-sabotaging. You know, when people are doing evil, you just have to wait for them to, you know, I mean, just like anything else, the one thing that good can do is just outlast. You know, evil has at its disposal, when you go against God's will, you can do things when you have no moral compass and you have no ethics. You can take shortcuts. You can do things that give you an unfair advantage. You can cheat, lie, steal. You can do everything that's, you know, that a person who's right with God can't do. And so from that standpoint, you're going to have, you know, shallow victories, hollow victories. But a person who's just doing what God wants them to do just has to ignore all the other bullshit. You don't even have to be like worried about it. And certainly not like Erika Kirk's worried about Candace Owens and these like naysayers who she's calling the evil ones, right? You know, we just got to wait for them to eat themselves. Like, it's silly. Because you have this idea that you're a good person and you're on the good side. And there's no good side or bad side. You know, there's only you following God's orders. Like, people doing that collectively can come together and work together and harmoniously, you know, in some way. But, you know, that's whatever that is, right? And it certainly doesn't come from those bullshit religions that have hijacked, you know, they're blaspheming God's name by claiming shit that God didn't say and wouldn't do and, isn't about, and using that to manipulate people. And, they're the opposites, and ego-driven. I mean, using people's belief and faith against them. I mean, that, those are that's like real fucking evil. Because it's one thing to be evil and just be a criminal and own that you're a criminal. It's another thing to pretend you're a godly person and grift people. It's the worst kind of bad person, right? And Erika Kirk's one of those people. And the other part of this is when you do bad things, when you do good things, or when you have good thoughts, and you work for God. When you work for God, then everything comes from God. You surrender to God. Say, I'm working for you. I'm going to give up my own, selfish existence and just work for you. And even if it's just partial, God takes care of you because you're working together. You're going into a partnership, and God's always giving and loving, and you become like you become you're noticed, right? Like, God doesn't have a mind, it doesn't have a personality or ego, and so you have to connect to God to become, to plug into the system. You plug into the source, and then, through that process, God is controlling everything in a sense because, you're a part of that whole thing. You're now connected. Well, when you're out on your own, just doing good and bad things, those things have consequences. Good consequences, bad consequences, but they're there. Like, everybody should understand this. People talk about karma or whatever, but there's things are, everything's recorded. There's a plan and there's a system in place, and there's accountability on a divine level. And maybe not in this life, maybe not something that people can see in a systemic, in terms of a court system and a law system, but in terms of everything else, everything's accounted for, right? So, all these things is something that's, gives you a release of having to worry about being angry about justice and why do bad people get away with stuff and why are bad people rewarded. In a demonic system, people who are demonic can do well, right? It's rigged for demonic people to succeed, but as long as you're judging your life by success in the demonic system, then yeah, you're gonna do poorly compared to an evil person who's lying, cheating, and stealing to get their way to the top. Like, if you look at that as success, but then you look at how miserable they are and how disconnected and lonely and how, all the negatives, and you're like, oh, I would no way trade my life for theirs. And the consequences of what they're doing and just how they feel, they're always waiting. Because when you're doing wrong, you're like, whether you're even conscious of it or not, you're waiting for the consequences to hit you. Like, they're there, whether, I mean, it's coming and you're just, you're standing in the middle of the tracks and the train is coming and you're, your foot's stuck, right? And you can't get out and the consequences are coming and you know it. So anyways, that's her thing. So that's the first piece to this.
They just shot Charlie. They just shot Charlie. They just shot Charlie. They just shot Charlie. He's dead. God help him.
Okay, so this is from the Young Turks. Whatever this woman's name is, you'll notice. Anna Kasparian, very angry liberal who didn't like Candace Owens for years, but now they're buds. She's buds with Tucker Carlson because they're all anti-Israel. Good for them, or whatever they are. But that guy was Terrell Farnsworth, right? And so let's watch this little clip. This is from Candace Owens' show. I knew she did this. I couldn't, whatever. None of these things mean anything to me because nothing's going to come of it, right? It's,
He grabbed that one, and he did it nervously. Here he is. Here he is. He's taking.
So we've seen this before, but we never saw this clear footage. At least I can't remember it being this clear. We saw this early on. Remember, people were thinking this was a holograph machine that he was taking down, but he grabs the SD card. And she says to Anna Kasparian that there was other cameras. He didn't grab the cards there. Of course, he lied to Candace Owens about this, right? And then he didn't grab the cards in the other cameras, and a few other things that she says about it. But what's really kind of more important is what I covered yesterday about this. So, the guy who was that Charlie, according to Andrew Covert, he was the guy in charge of handling Candace Owens, a disgruntled Candace Owens, and keeping her from turning on TPUSK, right? So the issue here is that way back when, according to Andrew Covert, Charlie Kirk was scared that Candace was going to turn on TPUSK. And this was a known factor, right? Like I always talk about how if they're going to do a conspiracy, they better get Erika Kirk handled, right? They have to make sure that she's on board. And they got to make sure Candace Owens is on board too. And I haven't discussed that. This is like a bullshit detector thing, right? Because, you can't have the wife, the grieving widow, come out and say, yeah, I think fucking Trump did it, right? I think Israel did it. Because that, she has, and then she's a real griever. And then they have to go after her and destroy her credibility. And then all the other people. I mean, if Erika Kirk was on board, this thing would be fucked. So before they whack them, they got to make sure she's a part of it. And maybe even years in advance, they got to make sure she's in place. Like she's theirs and not his. She's their operative, not Charlie's wife, right? And they also got to make sure Candace Owens, because all these people at TPUSK are shitting bricks that Candace Owens is going to turn on them. And so Andrew Covert says that, within days, like 5 days after Charlie was killed, she said, if the wrong people get in charge of TPUSK, I'm burning it to the ground. So that's already there. That's a possibility he said he was worried about. So you got this dopey motherfucker, Terrell Farnsworth, who takes the SD card and then lies to Candace Owens multiple times. We didn't have to talk to her. Gives her the footage of the, he hasn't give the full footage. He hasn't give the SD card, which he talks about here.
Taking down the camera altogether. If you're worried about theft, take the whole camera. It's pretty small. It's in your hand. He doesn't do that. He takes it apart and he takes the SD card out.
And so she eventually says to Anna Kasparian here that he could have gave the whole SD card, which we now know that the FBI said they have. He gave them a USB, which means he's kept the original footage. He didn't give them the original footage. And he's also he transmitted the stuff over some kind of Google app that he said he didn't want to do that for her at first, and then eventually gave it to her. But after she's been shitting all over this theory, like she's all over this thing, this guy decides to release a selfie video. Because after he does all this shit, he goes and films a selfie video. Or he did the selfie video first. I think he did the SD card first. And then she has another clip of him going on a laptop, right? Now, they came out and just immediately defended him at TPUSK to Tucker Carlson, who seemed to call bullshit. Like, there's a clip of that, right? But my first thing is, where does the footage come from? Who's filming it? Like when Erika Kirk's on top of Charlie's dead body, a day after he died, when they returned the body to her, an embalmed body in a coffin, and she's like putting her gaudy rings on there and fake acting like she's grieving, and she posts a selfie, video with somebody filming her on Instagram. Who's filming, right? And what was the conversation about? Because this is a stage thing. Come film me. Like, she's going to put it on Instagram. She didn't go, what the fuck? Why'd you film me doing what grieving? She said, all right, come film this. I'm about to see Charlie, and I'm about to see his dead fucking body. And I want to make sure I have a fucking video I can put on social media. Like, think about how fucked up that is, right? So, like something that I think about that most people don't, who don't do this professionally or whatever, is who's filming. Why do I have that? Who's giving the video out? Why this is what this part's about. This whole thing I'm talking about with Candace Owens. Why does Candace Owens have these videos, right? And so Erika Kirk goes and sees Charlie.
Oh, I love you. I love you. I love you.
So there's somebody's like right on top of her with a fucking camera. They either have it extremely zoomed in, but she's whispering, "I love you."
I know. I love you. I love you.
There's a movie called Broadcast News, I believe it's called. And it featured an anchor man who was good looking and articulate, but really wasn't a journalist. He didn't work his way up, wasn't somebody who, he looked good on camera. And it featured a couple of journalists who didn't like that kind of thing. And the woman who was directing the news. And he had a moment where he was interviewing a woman. And the woman, was talking about abuse or something. And he teared up while she was doing that. But they only had one camera. And his fellow reporter who didn't like him and didn't like him being involved with the director, the Holly Hunt character, right, said, how did they get that shot if they only had one camera? And so what they did was when they went back and he cried again on cue, so they could have that moment where he was crying and these things, right? Where there was manipulation. It wasn't an organic moment. Like he made himself cry, which he was acting, so that they could get that so he looked good. It's totally performative. And this thing that Erika Kirk's doing here, she is, like, what would you say, what would most people think when they're seeing the love of their life dead? And especially something like this where they're assassinated, a shock death, right? I mean, when somebody dies when they're old, it's weird. Like when you go and you see their fucking corpse, it's a weird thing. And, I saw my grandfather and I realized his soul was gone. He was 10 years old or whatever, 11 years old. But, there's that. But you don't really want a camera in there. Like, why do you catch this moment? Like, why do you need this moment on film? And you're going to put it up on fucking Instagram? It's still there. This is her account. Right? This world is evil, but our Savior, our Lord, our God, He is good, and I will never have the words ever. The sound of this widow's weeping echoes throughout this world. Like the sound of this widow's weeping echoes throughout this world like a battle cry. This was part of her speech. This was a written line. She said on the speech, and she said it here at Instagram, right? That like this was. And it isn't a battle cry for what? Like, so evil can eat itself, right? What the fuck are you talking about? The enemy? Like, what are you talking about? The enemy ends up being some, furry trans-loving dude that, like, makes no sense at all. And so the fact that she immediately is like, let's get into performance mode and let's, to think about seeing his corpse as a moment for Instagram, right? Like, how fucked is that? Like, you have no fucking heart. You're like, that you would use this moment of, like, fucking trauma and grief. Oh, like, I gotta get this on social media. Like, how fucked is that, right?
God bless you.
And they filmed all of it, right? They had pictures of her at the casket. So there they are together. That's the original photos. They're in some, Red Rock area. This video. Then her putting this fucking thing up next to his hands. Like she's like, let's bring in some fucking props. Let's bring in some fucking props. This mannequin-like hands. And then here, like, let's get some stills. Let's get the casket coming out. Let's get a flag at half-mast. Let's get me with getting a hug from J.D. Vance. And a small with Usha. Like, all right, me and Usha are walking to the plane. There's the Air Force 2. That's J.D. Vance's plane. And she's like, all right, let's have this moment here. Oh, and let's bring these in here. This will be good for both of us. I'll break down and start to cry, and you'll give me a hug. It'll be a good thing. We'll have this moment here. And then, and then let's get a picture of all us together and me doing this. You know, and oh, don't, no, stop at the camera. Stop. I don't want any publicity. I just want to grieve. I'm such a sincere griever. And then these other guys, right? So this is all the stuff they put up there, right? Because, like, she's claiming this thing, right? This is her territorial pissings. She's claiming the grief. She's claiming the company. You know, right after this thing, when this was done here, this is the thing here, right? She posted this speech, right? This is where she says the cries of this.
Good evening. My name is Erika Kirk. Charlie Kirk is my husband. I first want to thank the local, state, and federal.
And then she gets it here, womp womp, right? Like this is womp womp. No, Charlie Kirk was your husband. I mean, this is already, she's getting rolled here. Britney Spears approved. I mean, she's getting lit up in her own comment section. So, you know, these are the things that you have to think about. So first of all, let's go back to the other video.
And he looks around. He wants to see who's looking at him. And then he looks down at it and he walks around. And we had wondered, what did Terrell do when he walked around?
Okay, so the reason, so the first thing is, okay, this looks like one of his cameras because this was, official camera. And why did this get leaked? Remember, there were some videos of him doing this. I think they were more grainy and blurry. But this is a stationary camera. You see a camera right here. It's focused on Charlie. So this is one sitting on Charlie's side. They must have multiple angles of cameras for Charlie. People asking him questions. They're right in front of Charlie's mic, the original shot we saw. Why release this? And now, this is from a recent video that she posted, right? And so, so this guy, Terrell Farnsworth, talks to Candace Owens twice with the full knowledge of TPUS gay that Candace Owens is vindictive, bitter, and, kind of cunty. And she's pissed, didn't ever like Erika. And she got kicked to the curb by Charlie and TPUS gay. And Charlie was constantly worried she was going to turn on him. She's already verbalized she wants to, if people or the wrong people, take over, they're going to burn to the ground. And she's been kicking the shit out of them for months, right? And they keep on feeding her fucking information. Like, this is bullshit, right? There's no way they would do that. Like, they're supposed to hate Candace, and they keep on giving her more fuel to the fire. Like, she's on this liberal woman show here. Here
excuses that didn't make any sense. The first thing he said was, he wanted to.
And they said, she's all about this, right? But why did the guy talk to her? If this guy is a key guy, he's grabbing the information, he's grabbing the fucking damaging video. One can only, conclude that he took one SD card and never turned over the raw footage to the cops. You turn over, which means that there's evidence tampering. Like, why wouldn't he give him the raw footage? That's his first thing he did. I don't know when he did the selfie video, but who gives a shit? Like, his things that he did moments after Charlie was killed was a selfie video and then ran back and got the SD cards. Like, that's how fucked this guy is. And he thought the selfie video was going to exonerate him? It just makes him look shitty. And the selfie video has more or less disappeared. I found some guy on Facebook who has it. I couldn't find Candace Owens' version of it, right? And there's a TikTok video of it. And, and they were hard to find. I asked Google Gemini to find Candace's original video, and Gemini couldn't do it. And so, again, I had to find it on Facebook. Only from getting the TikTok video and taking some of the text and writing the text, and someone had printed the text on Facebook along with the video. And so, how fucked is that? Like, that's disappeared. Why wouldn't she show that over and over again? Because she said you should watch it over and over again, how weird it was. Like, I've memed it so I can reference it just in case this comes back up. But the thing here, the bullshit detector part is, why does she keep on getting this information? Here's another example. So this is last week's video. It's like 3 videos deep. Like, it's the, it's the newest video except for 2 other videos.
And where's your positive evidence for that? Shh. We can just say what we think, put ideas together. And as stated yesterday, there must be a sentence handed.
Yeah, let me do this here.
Way to lock in and really pay attention to the details.
Yeah.
Get ready because it's another big one. It is explosive. We have something to share that's never been seen, our favorite. But first, we have to jog your memory of whence we came. And I want you to lock in and really pay attention to the details. They matter. So I'm going to ask you the question, what was the original moment that made people suspicious of what happened on September 10th? What was the first thing that you saw online that made your eyebrow raise, so to speak? I would offer that it was when Terrell Farnsworth, Turning Point
This guy, why not show the video, though, of him?
USA's audio and visual lead.
Look at this Zach motherfucker.
He runs Visual Impulse, was seen taking down the cameras, particularly actually taking down one camera, the camera behind Charlie's head. And this turned out was less than 4 minutes after Charlie was hit. We know he went up and he recorded himself. He announced that Charlie was dead. He went down and he began removing that camera in particular. Before anybody knew who he was, I knew who he was. But the rest of the world just went, what's going on? Why are we violating a crime scene? Why is somebody moving a chair that Charlie was just sitting in to stand up and take that camera down? And I actually should be honest, unlike the rest of the world, I was not immediately suspicious because I knew Terrell. You'll recall this, right? I reached out to him, I've known him for years, and I said, what's up? I assumed that there had to be some sort of a reasonable explanation. That conversation took place, to remind you, on September 18th. Reached out to Terrell, got him on the phone, was expecting.
Okay, so let me go to the exclusive video, which I don't know if it's that video or another one here. But let's go to the exclusive video. Okay, so just to review what we're talking about here. So this guy, she reaches out to this guy, and he says he has, she asks him about what he did here. And so this camera catches the back of Charlie Kirk's head. And he describes to her what's in the video. So that's her first video about this. So he's telling her that there's no blood. There's no exit wound. And eventually he gives her that footage, which comes out and is used in the court now, that there's a, and I guess they zoomed in, which she's saying means that they had to clip it to edit it, which makes sense, right? So he gives her exclusive footage. No one else gets it, right? And so they're so terrified of Candace Owens destroying them, they start feeding her evidence. Like, nobody says to this guy, all right, shut the fuck up, right? Don't give anything more to Candace. But then he gives her the selfie video. And so he's got the selfie video, and then they give her this, because this is, again, their footage. Like, this is coming from a high-def camera. It's not somebody's, phone video. This is a stationary camera. And
Here he is. Here he is. He's taking down the camera altogether. If you're worried about theft, take the whole camera. It's pretty small. It's in your hand. He doesn't do that. He takes it apart and he takes the SD card out.
See, the camera is still. Like, this isn't somebody holding their phone. And why would they be? This guy's looking around like he knows he's got all these cameras. So he's not worried about his own footage. He doesn't want people to see what he's doing here.
And he looks around. He wants to see who's looking at him. And then he looks down at it and he walks around. And we had wondered, what did Terrell do when he walked around? He hasn't addressed any other camera there, just that one. Well, you don't have to wonder what he did anymore, because today I can tell you what Terrell did. Because I've actually known what Terrell did since October. As I was wondering who could be trusted at Turning Point USA. And like I said to you instantly, there was a network of government employees that were fighting to get the truth out and wondering who they could trust as well. And
yeah, why would they do that? You know, so here's the thing. They can never say that the government killed Charlie Kirk and there's a cover-up, that Israel did it, unless they want to go to war with Israel. Like, that's what that would mean. You know, this would be a monstrous, I mean, it would, Trump and MAGA would be done. I mean, if Trump and all these people covered up, all the people that would be involved, the FBI, it would be an epic scandal where they killed an American citizen who's been, you know, canonized as some kind of saint amongst these people. And the left wing would totally be into it because they're, you know, this anti-Carsperian, because this involves Israel, which they're, you know, the left wing's going off on Israel. And so, you know, they can't say there's some kind of hidden conspiracy, that this is, you know, they can't do that. I mean, this is the kind of thing that breaks a country. Unless they want to break America, you know, which of course they do, but I mean, I don't think it's going to go this way. And so they can't come out and say that. So these governmental officials, they know they've murdered this guy, and they're so desperate for the truth to go out, they're going to leak it to the worst fucking unstable, vindictive, cunty person out there in Candace Owens, that's who gives her this exclusive video.
Now appears to be the moment to not tell you what Terrell...
And she's been withholding this forever. She shit on this guy Terrell Farnsworth for multiple episodes. And she's waited this fucking long. She's waited this fucking long to tell her audience she's had this footage.
But to rather show you and let you draw your own conclusions about whether Terrell appeared concerned about anything other than that particular footage, okay? Here is what Terrell did thereafter, seen for the first time. Terrell is there.
Okay, so this is university fucking footage here. This is more of their bullshit, shitty cameras. Again, this is a non-event. Like, nobody knows about this thing other than people in Utah. You know, it's not Charlie's, one of his big events. It's a, you know, nondescript event. It just happens that the amphitheater is built to look like a menorah. You know, like all that shit we've gone through. And they have all this grainy security camera footage, which, you know, why wouldn't this footage be used in the court case? Like, this is part of that. Like, they seized all this footage. And Candace was given this and she's held on to it. I mean, two fucked up things. First, why would anybody give this to her? Like, she's not fucking going to make things better. Oh, there's some, like, she's trying to say there's Q-level people in the government who really want the fucking truth to come out. Right? And they give it to her, of all fucking people. And she holds on to it. You know, like, oh, it's going to happen soon. You know, Candace, you guys, it's you know, we're what was the thing I said the other day? I'll think of it in a bit. You know, they're almost there, right? We're almost there. You know, this whole kind of thing she says. I've already lost her nickname, but it'll come back to me. And somebody gives her this footage, makes no sense at all. You know.
He looks around again, nervously, and he puts the SD card in his pocket and he zips up. He doesn't run to the other cameras and try to grab the SD card. Instead, what he does is he whips out his phone and he begins texting with someone. And that's what he does.
Okay. So that's Exhibit A, Exhibit C or D or whatever it is, right? You know, Candace almost Owens. So then in her next video the following day, this is 2 videos ago, she has more exclusive footage. Like, she has 2 things where she's got exclusive footage, right?
I've had it since October. I've been interested in Terrell. Began texting on his phone, his mannerisms, or he's looking around. It's hard to forget that he is the first one who declared Charlie is dead. And then all of that within 4 minutes. He's taken that footage down, 4 to 5 minutes. He's around the bend, got it in his pocket, texting. Well, today we can share with you my very own October surprise. I call it an October surprise because I've had it since October.
Again, withholding information. Like, why not give everybody everything you have all at once? And she says, I'm always trying to catch them in traps. You know, I get them to say certain things, and then I show the footage showing that they're lying. It never leads to anything. Like she never, you know, none of this ever becomes the official story, right? Like everybody that watches her is convinced that this is shitty, and then people, you know, outside of that also realize this is all deception. But it never does anything. Right? You know, we're getting close, Sam. We're getting close. That's what it is. Candace, we're getting close, Owens, right? You know, we're getting close, you guys. We're almost there. And then she waits this fucking long. We're like a year and a half into this thing. And she's got all these videos. And where is she getting these videos, right? This is all seized shit by the feds. And they certainly don't want, I mean, this is a conspiracy and they're covering up. They don't want this out. And they've already killed the guy. Right, and so who's going to leak this to her? What Fed employee who realizes they're right to kill Charlie Kirk, and then giving this to Candace Owens isn't going to protect them? Like, you know, they're going to, as soon as this is released, the feds are going to be going in and finding out who's leaking shit, right? And your life immediately is in jeopardy, and certainly your career, but probably your life, because you can't be leaking shit like this, because the only explanation is they want her to have it. And they, you know, but don't use it for a while. Like, you know, like keep your audience going.
I've had it since October. I've been interested in Terrell since October. Well, since September when I spoke to him, and it just felt off. Intuition, and like I said, there were good guys in government.
Fuck you. Like fuck you. You are you QAnon now? You good guys working to battle the deep state? The good guys in government leak this out to you? I mean, like, who would fucking believe that? See, that's just bullshit. Like, there's no way. Like, they're not fucking stupid. They know this is never gonna. You know, if you're in the government, you know all the secrets you might know and all the things you might be suspicious of. Why does it never ever come out? You know, the media zone. I mean, they've just so. The people who are leaking this know that the official story is bullshit, which means, you know, only thing it could mean is that there was a conspiracy to kill Charlie Kirk and to pin it on this other guy. And so they know probably, or they're suspicious of Israel and Trump and the FBI. I mean, they know that the people who are running their organization, the feds slop, as she always calls it. Like, look at her. Look at that fuck. I mean, this is the cuntiest thing ever, right?
In Terrell since October, well, since September when I spoke to him, and it just felt off. Intuition, and like I said, there were good guys in government.
Okay, first of all, it doesn't take intuition to know that Terrell Farnsworth is fucked up. Like she's gotten like now 4 exclusive videos. His selfie video, she was the first one to see the video from behind, that there was no exit wound, which he sent her. Terrell Farnsworth sent her a selfie video that looks incriminating as fuck, right? And then again, that's like disappeared. And now these 2 other videos, one of them, and the 3 videos really, because that one that's, you know, that's out there of him putzing around and grabbing the camera, they had some other footage, but why was that released? I mean, why would that ever be released? Like, that's his cameras. He's releasing, like, he's looking suspicious, and then he releases videos that, you know, he's in charge. He's a private contractor that does audio-visual shit for them. And usually, like, he would come to one of these events, one of these smaller events. So there was suspicion there. This is stuff that she said, you know, at some point. And so, like, just, like, so fucking goofy. And so this guy, he releases the footage of himself taking the SD card when that was the number one thing people were talking about. And they're saying it was a hologram machine. It looked like there's hologram machines that look like that Charlie was a hologram. So that was like already, you know, but I mean, getting the audience was a hologram, you know, so them running differently than Trump's bullshit air assassination attempt where nobody ran, right? And then she gets all this footage that's either owned by Terrell Farnsworth, it's his private footage, as she's burying this guy in the internet, right? Like he's the number one fucking, oh my God, like you're fucked, bro. Like you know, you just. I mean, he's that guy, right? And like he's getting buried by her. He gives her 3 exclusive videos that incriminate the shit out of him, and you know, suspicious videos that you don't need intuition to figure out that that's fucked. And then she gets 2 videos from the feds as she kicks the shit out of TPUSK, right? And they keep on, you know, putting the ball on the tee for her.
Working behind the scenes. And what I learned is that after he pocketed that, he then pretty immediately opened up his laptop. And apparently, in my opinion, that's what I observed with my eyes, sticks the SD card in. For what reason, I don't know. But I'll let you make up your own mind. Take a look. You're listening to this on audio. Here is Terrell. He's bending down and he's opening his laptop and he's certainly sticking something into his laptop.
Okay, so I think what they have here is, this is the great, I don't think, this is some kind of security camera they have there. And they have a lot of fucking cameras on this campus. You know, this is an area, I mean, these kids are all getting taped all the time. Like, there's kids hanging out at this amphitheater. I mean, it looks like some shitty little community college or some shit. I don't know. Certainly isn't a college I've ever heard of before. And now they're focusing on him, so it's going to get even more grainy. But this is, again, only footage that the feds have. And some feds illegally leaked this when an active murder investigation is going on to Candace Owens, all the way back in October. They were so suspicious, they reached out to Candace Owens, who is not a fucking reliable person. I mean, would you trust Candace Owens? Right?
As he turns on to his computer, he's reaching in his phone, he's texting with somebody. And yes, some people might be noting that Lane Schoenberger's on the side washing his hands. That makes sense. Don't think too hard about it. He did help carry Charlie into the car, so he's likely just getting blood off of his hands, as any person would after that. But you see Terrell, and again, he's texting. He picks up the laptop, and what happens thereafter is he sits facing the other direction and continues onto his laptop, doing what I don't know.
You don't know that part. I don't know. I don't fucking know. So, like, you know, you always have to ask, where is this video coming from? You know, after one of these shooting events, one of these really suspect crisis actor-looking witnesses, there was a reel of footage of the guy rehearsing his lines that he was going to say to the news media. And he's doing it on camera. And the guy's really fucking weird. This is one of these big events, you know, one of these shootings. And I mean, it's just... And so the question is, why would he do it on camera? And why was it released? You know, because they've been fucking putting out shit for truthers forever. A lot of the suspicious stuff that goes around is stuff to whatever reason that they're trying to, you know, create a truth community or whatever bullshit, you know, stuff that's being fed to keep it going. Like, they want this. They want this battle between Candace the cunt Owens and Erika cunt. Right? Like, fucking, they want this cunt off. Because, you know, this is... and people always say distraction, and maybe that's it. I don't fucking know. But I do know that this stuff is not organic. Her getting all this stuff, and why did she wait this long to fucking release that shit? And again, she's not confronting some lie these guys have just told or some bullshit. You know, like, she just, like, slowly releases this information. We're getting close, you guys.
We are definitively getting closer to what took place on that day, and we are getting closer. I think we're close. We are definitively getting closer. We're getting close. We're getting low. Very close. We're inching ever closer. We are now, I believe, extremely close to solving this thing. I've got a feeling about that. We're close. We're getting closer to something, and that something is pretty big. I just sense that we're getting close. I sense that we are getting very close.
She says a lot of kind of thing. I sense, I use my spidey sense, my intuition, my spiritual nature, my spidey sense. We're getting closer and closer. Like, this goes on, right? It's like, you know, I mean, this is what she always says. Because she withholds information and she keeps her audience in a suspended state of, like, what I talk about, the Lost, you know, of cliffhangers. I got a bombshell coming up, and we're going to be even closer. trying is failing. Try to do something means you fail. Like you didn't succeed. Succeed in doing something. We're getting closer, you guys. She just keeps people in that state and then moves on to something else, because nothing ever fucking happens. Like, even if she wanted it to happen, it's not. Like, she doesn't. Like, fucking, she's a part of this thing, keeping people in this withholding resolution. Your mind wants resolution, right? That's what they did at Lost. The TV show Lost is a great example, but they do it all over the place. The borderline personality disorder, there's this thing called the thematic aptitude test, the TAT. And in the thematic aptitude test, there are these very, vague pictures. Like, they're pictures that are very dramatic. And you're supposed to come up with a story. And people with borderline personality disorders cannot come up with a story where there's any resolution. They withhold resolution in their interactions with people. They keep you, in suspense. Like, are we going to break up or we're not? Like, cryptic kind of things. Like, if you're in a relationship with, God forbid, you get into a relationship with someone with borderline personality. There's a saying, I hate you, don't leave me. Right? Like, that's like a borderline personality disorder thing. And so, this, what we're getting close is like that kind of thing. Suspended resolution. Like, we're just almost there. Just stick with me a little bit longer. We're going to get around this corner. It's going to always work out, right? Somebody who's always, some person who's just about to make it big. If you guys just, hang in there. I know I'm not paying you, to the staff. I know you're, and people just never fucking do anything. My ex was someone who, went to school and was an incredibly brilliant student and would come up with plans and things that were, would never be actualized, never accomplish anything. Just keep on studying it and, keep on, researching something, but never taking your research and bring it into reality, right? Never make it practical, never make it real. And that's how, this kind of personalities roll. They keep you suspended. We're getting close, you guys.
And we are getting closer, getting very close to something.
Very close to something. Something big's coming, then bringing out, people like Mitch Snow, and then just, things like that. All right, that was exposed. I'll pretend that never happened. But the Fort Huachuca thing still comes back around, and that's still going nowhere because that was all bullshit, right? And just, and then withholding fucking information all the way back to October. That's fucking 10 months ago. That's a year ago. And you're releasing it now? And then their trial isn't going to come forever. Who gives a shit about this fucking thing at this point, right? Like, Erika Kirk is so fucking weird, and TPUS gay is so sucky, and Candace Owens is so fucking manipulative. Like, and they're all working in conjunction to keep you in suspended fucking anime, suspended without resolution, right? Like, you want things, your mind wants to resolve this thing. I want to just know the answer. We're getting close, you guys. Candace, we're getting close, you guys. Owens. Okay, so I want to add to this whole Candace Owens. I guess my title of my video is Candace, we're getting closer, Owens, and Erika, video my grief, Kirk. Are working together. Like, they're in a symbiotic relationship. And, like, to understand this, you got to understand, like, people's way of going about getting their needs or desires met, or getting something from you or something from the world. Especially on social media. Sometimes it's very obvious a person's needing something. People post something on social media because they need validation. Like, a lot about social media is validation. People are looking for validation, people to give them a heart or a thumbs up, or say something to them. Like I always say in my videos, if I say I have a migraine headache, or if I say I'm having a rough day or whatever, I always say I don't need you to comment. Like, it's fine. Like, I'm not looking for, like, that's too bad, or I don't need all that shit. It's just like me telling you what I'm going through as a way to kind of explain that the kind of day I'm having or whatever's going on with me is going to affect the video and, the way the information comes out, because people aren't consistent, right? But when you're dealing with people, and, and people should know this in themselves and often don't, for a variety of reasons, people just can't ask for what they need, right? Or what they want, or what they, what their true agenda is. And there are some people who can just announce it and are very grabby, and, but even then, there's often a hidden part of that. Like Trump demanding shit from people, Trump demanding whatever he demands. It's to fill some void inside himself that he's, not willing to look at. There's something missing, something empty, something, there's the outward behavior, and then there's some deeper situation going on, right? Some of this is just natural, where people are afraid to be vulnerable and afraid to say that they, like someone else, or whatever that means, whether it's a romantic thing or just a friendship thing, and they want to spend time with you, but, are worried about getting rejected, or that it's going to come off weird. And, people have all these things that, we live in a fucked up society. But, there's always these hidden agendas, and oftentimes, like I said, people don't even know why they do the things they do, or the compulsions that they have, and they don't really want to because they're scared of fucking really knowing. So, there's a lot of behaviors that, people don't understand why, what's being done and what's the goal. Like, you should always ask yourself, what's my goal here? Like when I make these videos, like me having a YouTube channel. Some of this is financial because it's a job, right? Some of it is spiritual because I have an obligation to pass on the information about Sajmarg and my spiritual practice, because you're just supposed to do that. And so then there's maybe some other things with it, whatever. Various other types of smaller, goals. But there's always good to know what your goals are. Like, why am I doing what I'm doing? Like, you should never not know what you're doing, like why you're doing something. Because that's where you get fucked up. Because, like, you should always, there should be tied to some overall goal. Your spiritual goal. If your spiritual goal is to go back to God, then everything that you do should be a part of that. Like, it should somehow be a part of that overall journey. You have these smaller tasks that you have to navigate, and, these things. So when you're looking at behaviors, and let's go back to this Charlie Kirk thing. When you're looking at, like, why kill Charlie Kirk? Like, all right, so what's the motivation for killing Charlie Kirk? Like, you don't know who. Like, we can speculate about who killed Charlie Kirk. More than likely involved Israel. More than likely involved Charlie Kirk's changing his tune. But there could be other reasons. Maybe they wanted to divide the Republican base. I mean, there's all these things out there, right? So both sides of the division in the Republican base, you have the people who are the Tucker Carlsons and the Candace Owens, and they're over being Republican. They're out, whatever, and whatever shills there are, whatever, whoever's putting them up and to do what they're doing, they don't really give a shit if Republicans are elected again. They're no longer believing it. They don't believe in Trump anymore, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and some people, prominent MAGA people. I mean, they're not certainly left-right paradigm where they've given up on politics. They're still into politics, but they're over the Republican Party, and they've basically said that. So for them, it doesn't matter if they are divided, because their audience is growing, and they're able to be more authentic because they're not carrying water for a bullshit Republican Party. And so, you can understand their motivation. Like, they are succeeding, and they're distancing themselves from Trump and these other people. And when shit goes south, everyone's going to look at them like they're great, even though they're late to the party motherfuckers that jump on these bandwagons that are well established by many of us who have known about this and been talking about this for years. They're going to come out looking good. But the people who are TPU, U.S. gay people, the Republican Party people, the J.D. Vance, and all these other people, and them saying things and doing things, the Ben Shapiro's, Israel, to provoke more division. Like, they just got, if they were smart, they would find a way to find common ground. They got to bring these people back in. They have to have a bigger tent. They have no chance in the midterms. They have no chance in, future elections. And, no matter what happens, they've lost their enthusiasm. They're never going to get the Trump enthusiasm. Trump fucked them. And so all these people who are at war with the the new wing of the the more the I don't know, call it truth wing or the the anti-MAGA wing, former MAGA wing. You can't do that. You've lost your audience. You've lost your market share. You've got dwindling numbers, and you're going to fuck yourself. So, if you're really into being successful and having a good relationship with, Americans and having power and being thought of, you need your base, and you need to bring these people back in. But they just keep on doing more things to piss them off. So how can that be their goal? Their goal can't be being elected. Your goal can't be, all right, I really want to unify the Republican Party and then say things to shit on a good portion of them, right? Like if your goal is success and to grow your audience and to grow your voter base and, for Israel to repair their relationship with Americans and America, then you got to change what the fuck you're doing, right? Like anybody could see that. Like if you want to, get back in with your wife and you're a drunk, cheating piece of shit, you can't be like bad-mouthing her and cheating on her and then blaming her and, you got to fucking eat shit and like, like she's moved on. If she wants, if she's legitimately moved on, like she's no longer wanting you in any capacity, and you got to truly win her back, not some bullshit thing where she doesn't care. She just wants to take you back, and if you just pretend that you're a changed person so she can believe it, right? I told this story when I was getting my master's degree in counseling. I had an addictions counselor, a guy who worked with people who are alcoholics and drug addicts. And he had this woman come in. It's like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And her husband, who's the alcoholic, is shit-faced. Like he's breathing out alcohol, stumbling in. He's obviously drunk. Like there's no doubt about it. And his wife is like, I'm so she's like fucking glowing. And she's like, I'm so happy with Charlie here. He's stopped drinking and he's just so great. And he's making so much progress. And she's so convincing in her delusion. The guy's sitting there, breathing out alcohol and fucking completely shit-faced at 1 in the afternoon. That the therapist, my teacher, the professor at my school, he has to go get a colleague. And he brings his colleague in to check out the guy. And so, yeah, he's fucking drunk. Because he can't believe that, she's so convincing. Her, her illusion of what is happening, with her husband is so convincing. Like she's, lying to herself in such a convincing way that he doubts his own ability to perceive a shit-faced person, a shit-faced alcoholic, right? And so, you have that, like where people are so self-deceptive. But, these people are not going to win anybody back as long as they still are sticking with the official story. And so you add to that all this, they say they're at war with Candace Owens, but they just keep on giving her ammo. They just keep on putting things on a tee for her. And the federal government, who she calls Fed slop and all this shit, there's people who are willing to risk their jobs. I mean, it's criminal, like it's for them to leak information. They could be charged with a crime and maybe even killed. And leak video that isn't going to change a fucking thing. And that she would withhold her information for 10 months to her audience. I always talk about how people are disrespectful to their audience when they lie to their audience. All these people that push Trump and wouldn't admit that Trump's, either they wouldn't admit it to themselves or they wouldn't admit it to other people, that Trump's fake assassination attempt was fake. All the people that pretended Joe Biden wasn't fucking senile for 6 years when he clearly was, he lost his shit. And in the beginning of the election, he was fucking losing his shit. He showed that he had some kind of form of dementia. And he had prostate cancer, stage 4, by the end of his term. He had cancer and fucking Parkinson's at the same time. And they pretended he didn't. Like all this bullshit. Like you don't think that's going to come around, bite you in the fucking ass? That he nominated Kamala Harris, one of the most unlikable and unelectable politicians, to take his place and sabotage any future and assure, guarantee that Trump's going to get a second term. That this isn't all somehow staged. Like they just all suck so fucking bad. They just keep on shooting themselves in the foot. And they can't do anything in terms of, the most logical things that you would do to run a conspiracy. If you're going to, murder Charlie Kirk, you don't roll out his fucked up wife to make, reaction videos to his corpse on day one and have her give these bizarre speeches and roll her out with all of her bullshit. The Shabbat Shalom thing and all that weird shit she says. It just, and her fake crying and the fake grieving. And then, bring in two people that are two twinks, two gay looking, acting supposedly Republican men who are, horrible and unlikable to do the job. And then, do everything possible to create a divide between Candace Owens, who already has a vendetta and is angry about the way she was treated, who's going to certainly going to try to, doesn't like Erika Kirk in the first place, and do everything to provoke her, and then hand her information so she can keep on slapping you. And then she just takes all this information and, does this slow burn. I mean, this whole thing about the, suspending resolution. When you're playing a game, or if you go to bed when you're watching TV in a movie and you haven't watched the end, you haven't watched the climax of it, and you're thinking about it, or, some song that plays in your head, like when something's not finished, like you need things to be resolved. And so it just, your mind's just going to work. Your people are problem solvers. And so if you're given a problem and you don't get some resolution for it, and you just, this suspended fucking resolution, it just drives people nuts, right? And it's very addictive, but it's horrible for people. And and not admitting that no matter what evidence comes out, they're never going to fucking admit the truth about this thing. And if they do admit it, they're trying to take America down completely. Like that's the only reason to do it. And so, you have layers and layers of just insidious agendas and, fucked up behaviors that it's hard to figure out why anybody would do the things that they're doing. I mean, certainly their stated goals and intentions aren't true. They're certainly not right with God. They're certainly not right with the truth. And everything they're doing seems to be self-sabotaging. There are different types of people. There are people who are restless people. Like I was a restless person, not as restless as my brother and some of my kids. But, someone who's restless. And, there's people who are just great at doing mundane tasks. They can do the same boring shit over and over again. They can perform their job. Mundane, mindless bullshit. And they're just good at it. And they're necessary to do that because it's work that's necessary. And there's some people who struggle with that. They need constant drama, constant change, people who can't stay in the same place, can't sustain relationships. I was one of those people when I was younger. And I got better through the meditation that I do, the Sajmark meditation. I got better at being able to do mundane tasks and do boring things. The repetition. Some people are good at big, adrenaline rush events. They're good in a crisis, but they suck at the mundane bullshit. Like they need lots of stimulation. So you have these different types of personalities, right? And these personalities make up a society and a family. And, people like people who are like themselves, but only dumbass narcissists marry and seek people who are a carbon copy of themselves. It's good to have things in common, but you need a different skill set and you need different perspectives. And this is why they say opposites attract. And, you have all these types of personalities, and to make things work, you need different types of people. And you have to have some gratitude and understand and put value in things that other people do that you're not good at. Like there's things I'm like the worst at: clerical work, filling out forms and these types of things, based on my, dyslexia and personality type and, networking and things like that, things that are necessary. And, when my wife does those things or, other people do those things, I appreciate the things that I'm not good at when other people do them, right? Because they have value, or the things that I can do, but it takes so much of my energy and I'm never going to do them well. And so, you can place value on things that other people do that you're not necessarily good at, or, when you're managing a society or you're in charge of, or even participating in it, you got to understand that there's things that are out there that other people are doing. Like, too often now people think the work that they're doing is the only important work. People think that what they're doing is so much more important than what other people are doing. I remember with my family, like all my kids, my ex, everyone who was involved, and myself all felt like we were the ones propping the family up, right? And I feel even now it was clearly me. But, they all felt that way and, unaware of all the fucking things I had to do and deal with on every level, And And so when you have like a complete breakdown in your society where, you hate the people that are different than you and the people that don't believe the same things you do, and there's just animosity and distrust, then of course you're going to have an apocalypse, like these types of things. And of course they're going to stage things like the Charlie Kirk thing, and they're going to keep you I don't know, spinning your wheels watching something that isn't ever going to resolve itself. There's going to be no satisfactory resolution to any of these things. And those of us who've been around the truth community for a while, we know that these things never, what you have is a bullshit official story that no one really believes and isn't really even being talked about, and a more compelling alternative set of narratives, some more realistic than others, but they're still all better than the actual official stories. And the majority of people might believe in one of these, at least not believe the official story, and then subscribe to one of these other alternative narratives. But, that nothing ever comes of it. Like the official story still stays the official story. Like they're still talking about the official story about COVID, and people are still out there talking about maybe it's bats, or maybe Fauci did a good job. Like even then, even now, after he's pleaded the fifth, and maybe Joe Biden wasn't fucking senile the whole time, and maybe Donald Trump really is a genius. Like still, like fucking, come on, like what movie are you watching? Right? What point do you realize that your whole belief system was fucking baked, right? But people just can't get there. All right, so I just saw some weird fucking thing that somebody sent me on Instagram. I'm going to do a little clip of that next. Involves a mirror ball scrotum. And then I'll wrap this video up with a few more clips here. All right, one of my viewers just sent me this. This is a country singer named Casey Musgraves, who has a scrotum, a mirror ball type scrotum chair that she's singing in. Fuck. Why would anybody want that? Is that like the least desirable place to be for anybody? How does that even come about? Like, how is that a thing? I mean, these are supposed to be conservative country people. And she's sitting up there elevated on a fucking spinning, sparkly scrotum. I used to make fun of Truck Nutz. Remember, people talk about the woman to man, or the man to woman transgender, but not the woman to man. The men who are the women who think they're men. And it said that many of them are getting truck nuts, like fake nuts. And I had a whole thing about it back when I had my just let it happen stuff that I couldn't say because they were, YouTube was sensitive about that shit back then. But, to put yourself up on spinning trucks, sparkly, glammed out truck nuts and singing some bullshit country song, that's hilarious. So I took a nap, woke up, looked at Twitter, and this was what Twitter recommended. My wife had actually just said that whatever this woman, Natalie, is it? Some fucking, I don't know. Well, it'll come back around to me. Harp. Whenever they showed her, they should show her with a diaper bag, because there's a picture with her with a diaper bag. Maybe it was AI, maybe it wasn't. Who's to say? But here she goes, Jason Trump's golf cart, and diapers are falling out of the back of it, right? So that's great. Like, that's a wonderful meme. And so it was funny because my wife was saying this thing and it happened. And then, sometimes when I click on the link so I can, take it and put it on a separate tab, I accidentally hit the person who was posting the link. And when I did that, this came up. So remember when I was showing Erika Kirk on Instagram, I read that quote of her in the battle cry. So this person's first post, again, this is a year and a half old, this speech.
The evildoers responsible for my husband's assassination.
It's just a doer. It turns out it's just some It's one doer. It's not evil doers. It's an evil doer, singular. You know, it's a one man show. He's a guy who likes furry trannies, and he's there's a lot of sketchy evidence, but it's just a doer.
Have no idea what they have done.
What is it? What have they done?
They killed Charlie because he preached a message of patriotism, faith, and of God's merciful.
Or because he took $200 million from them and then fucked them with turning against them, like maybe that. Those evildoers. Like this thing hasn't aged well.
Love. They should all know this. If you thought that my husband's mission was powerful before, you have no idea. You have no idea what you just have unleashed across this entire country. In this world, you have no idea.
No, you don't. You don't have any idea. You don't have it. No idea at all.
You have no idea the fire that you have ignited within this wife. The cries of this widow will echo around the world like a battle cry.
Boom. So that was she wrote that on her Instagram page. I mean, she's already coming up with fucking bumper sticker quotes, gay ass fucking quotes. I mean, the guy's only been dead 3 fucking days, right? And it turned out like the cries of this widow were just all fake and insincere. I mean, inauthentic, ungenuine, unemotional, right? Performative. And, she's absolutely fucking done nothing. I mean, she's run the business into the ground, right? And which brings me back, I was getting in and getting out. I mean, I covered this for a while, and, I don't want to cover this every day. I mean, I like making fun of the 2 twinks, which we'll get to in a second here. But all that stuff turned out to be false, right? There's no evildoers. It's one weird guy that they're pinning this fucking bullshit. Some patsy. They got a patsy. And, there's no... I mean, TPUS gay is dead. And she's horrible at her job. And the cries of this widow have not rung around the world like a battle cry. Like they've rung around the internet like a woman who's getting mocked because she's completely inauthentic, right? Okay, so the left is panicking over Americans loving America one day ago. They're still trying to talk about the left when like their battle is just